It's the most historic and overlooked MVP race ever. The players that are voting the top 5 were at the top of their game. We're going to discuss the regular season performances of Scottie Pippen, Hakeem Olajuwon, Penny Hardaway, David Robinson, and Michael Jordan. We're going to start with the 5th place and finish with the MVP winner. Make sure to comment on your take on who was the most deserving. If you had the luxury of watching the 1996 Chicago Bulls in real time, then you are fully aware that they were much more than the greatness of Michael Jordan. Although they certainly benefited from having the MVP, it was the way they incorporated the team aspect of the game that allowed them to have such a historically dominant season. Everyone played their role to perfection. That includes Scottie Pippen, who was the second best player on this juggernaut of a team. Here's how we know that his contributions were vital. The Bulls produced the highest points per game average and offensive rating in the league. Pippen was the orchestrator of their offense, as he was their leading assist man. He was also their second leading scorer. On the defensive end, the Bulls produced the best defensive rating. Scottie's non-stop zeal and commitment to playing high-intensity defense is what set the tone. For example, this is what their assistant coach, Jim Clements, said about his immense value. Scottie had a phenomenal season. He carried us through the first 40 games. When I say carried us, I mean his energy in terms of rebounding, driving the ball up the floor, defensive presence, and the whole 9 yards. End of quote. His contributions cannot be overlooked. For a player like him, you have to look beyond the box score. You have to actually watch him play to truly appreciate everything that he brings to the table. But the numbers don't look too bad either. He averaged 19.4 points on 46% shooting, 6.4 rebounds, 5.9 assists, and 1.7 steals per game. That allowed him to finish first team All-NBA and All-NBA defense. There were games where he truly looked like one of the top 5 players in the game. Take for example, what he did against the Indiana Pacers.
Jordan off the fake around the key and tipped home by Pippen. Off the double team, Pippen with the steal. Pippen all the way. Down to 2 as Pippen fires and hits. Kerr and Scottie Pippen on the floor along with Kukoc, Rodman, and Wennington. And Pippen, nice fake. Oh, Scottie Pippen.
He recorded 40 points on 54% shooting, 10 rebounds, 5 steals, and 2 assists. But that's not the most impressive part. Michael Jordan recorded 44 points on 55% shooting, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. This makes him one of the few pair of teammates to score over 40 points in a game. On nights where they were both clicking like that, they were impossible to beat. It's true that for the most part, he wasn't having these kind of performances, but it's important that we consider the context. It was reported that he was battling with a bad back, aching knees, and a nagging ankle injury throughout the year. It was an assortment of injuries that he was facing due to the extensive miles that were mounting on his body. Think about it. Jordan took a 21-month hiatus after retiring. The only other player remaining for the 1993 championship-winning team was him. He was the one that was carrying the Bulls to the playoffs those 2 seasons. On top of that, he was averaging an incredible 94 games per season since being drafted. It's only normal for all of that to take its toll. Then we have the chase for 70, all the pressure and the attention they were facing to make history. But that didn't stop him from continuing to play at a high level. It was common knowledge to everyone how valuable he was for the Bulls at the time, hence where he finished in the MVP race, and it's something that we shouldn't doubt either. Nobody's stock was higher going to the 1995-96 season. He won the last 2 titles and finals MVPs. He had back-to-back historically great playoff runs. We're talking top 10 worthy. His career was validated and legacy was solidified. These were accomplishments that couldn't have come at a better time. He was 32 years old after winning his 2nd title. It's extremely rare for a big man to be the best player in the world at that age. With all that mileage, could he continue playing at that level? Were we going to see a steep decline? For those waiting on his downfall, they were going to have to suffer a little longer. The numbers were incredibly similar to what he produced in the previous regular season. Check out this graphic. As you can see, the numbers were only slightly worse. He had every right to still be considered one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world. At that stage of his career, what he was doing was simply unheard of. Did you know that he recorded the highest points per game average from any center that was 33 years of age or older? In fact, he and Kareem are the only players to record over 25 points per game. It's crazy that he was able to maintain an MVP level production. This is what happens when you're arguably the most skilled post scorer in league history. Even if he didn't have the same speed or athleticism, he could still score anytime he wanted. There are plenty of examples that prove his individual greatness. There were 5 total games where he scored over 40 points. There were 2 instances where he was a rebound or 2 away from posting a 40-20 game. Then there's what he did against the Boston Celtics.
Olajuwon with that spin move, fall away. Oh, what a shot to Timmy Bro. Timmy going to take it right down to Olajuwon. He's in for the slam. Game tied at 82. They'll take it to Olajuwon again. Working on Raja, fall away, baseline, reposition. Over to Olajuwon again, 4 on the shot clock, little fadeaway, oh, the dream. Anybody, now he's finally, there's Olajuwon, taking it to the middle. Little fake, puts up the jumper, yes!
It was a monster performance. He had 51 points on 54% shooting, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. It was the second highest scoring game of his career. But there's something you have to know about Hakeem the Dream. There are very few players who could fill up a stat sheet quite like he could. He has recorded some of the most insane stat lines. This season was no exception. For example, he had 2 games where he posted a triple-double involving blocks. He posted 31 points on 62% shooting, 13 rebounds, 10 blocks, and 6 assists against the Dallas Mavericks. Only he, Kareem, Wilt Chamberlain, and David Robinson have posted over 30 points, 10 rebounds, 10 blocks, and 5 assists in a game. But that's not all that he did.
Flings it into Hakeem, he got Olajuwon wins the game! Olajuwon wins the game!
That's right, he even provided the buzzer-beating shot. He was doing it all for the 2-time defending champions. Out of necessity, he needed to play at this level in order for the Rockets to stay afloat. They dealt with so many injuries. Clyde Drexler missed 30 games, Mario Elie missed nearly half the season, Sam Cassell missed 21 games, Kenny Smith missed 14 games, and Robert Horry missed 11 games. Their 5 best players couldn't stay healthy. It got so bad that there was a point where the Rockets had more active players who play in the CBA that didn't. That's a lot of pressure on Hakeem to carry this team, and his body was breaking down. Towards the end of the season, he was suffering through tendinitis on both knees. He also missed 10 games. If we're going to be honest, it was amazing that this team nearly won 50 games. They had a 48-34 record, which was the 5th best in the West. Unfortunately, it seemed like league voters held the team's struggles against him. He was snubbed for finishing the top 3 in MVP voting, even though he finished 2nd in points, 4th in blocks, and 6th in rebounds. The numbers say that he was a top 3 player. The way he carried a team that was suffering through so many injuries was very impressive. Who else was truly more valuable to their team other than Michael Jordan? But the league voters compensated the ones who led their team to better regular season success. Due to this fact, there are those who believe the false narrative that he fell off a cliff after 1995. That couldn't be farther from the truth. He was still a monster, and there are still those who weren't counting them out for winning a 3rd straight title. That's how high he was regarded and how well he was playing. Penny Hardaway was different. He was only in his 3rd season. He hadn't reached his true peak yet, but he was already being mentioned among the top players in the league. Better yet, he was already drawing comparisons to Magic Johnson. We never got to see the best of Penny, and we still all remember how great a player he was during this time. His peak was truly influential and memorable. In the 1995-96 season, we got to see what he could do individually and how he could lead a team to greatness. The expectations that they had for this team were through the roof, but those expectations were halted after they received some tough news. In just a week before the start of the season, Shaq broke his right thumb. He was forced to sit out the first 22 games. They were going to miss the most important piece to this team. For example, in 1995, he won the scoring title and he was runner-up for the MVP. He averaged a stat line of 29.3 points on 58% shooting, 11.4 rebounds, and 2.4 blocks per game. That's who they were going to be without for the first quarter of the year. This was indeed a devastating blow. This was going to be a huge test for Penny Hardaway. Was he good enough to lead a team on his own? His first test will come in the 7th game of the season against the Chicago Bulls. You know, the team that would end up winning 72 games. They were fully healthy and they were out for revenge. This was the first matchup since the Orlando Magic knocked them out of the playoffs. Michael Jordan was waiting all summer for this moment. With that context, you would think the Bulls blew them out by 40 points. Except the opposite happened.
Hardaway comes around the screen, splits the defenders, great move offensively. Concat gets out of the way, Hardaway with a three. Hardaway has it again and backs in against Michael. Fades, MJ right there, and Hardaway hits. In the third quarter, Hardaway one-on-one with Michael. Fades, baseline jumper goes in. Across the floor, tipped. Out to Hardaway for three.
The Orlando Magic beat the Bulls 94-88. He ended the game with 36 points on 67% shooting, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. This was his moment to showcase what truly made him such a special player. He was someone who could impact the game on both ends of the floor. Even with one of the best individual defenders hounding him, he was ultra efficient. He was able to get his way because he was so skilled. Michael Jordan gave his thoughts about him and the team after the game. Quote, "When the big guy is in there, they seem to have to go in there and they have to get it back out, and the defense has a chance to set up. Here, they isolate you and use their ability quite a bit, which puts pressure on the defense." End of quote. And that's exactly what the team orchestrated with O'Neal out. They changed the offense by using Penny much more in the low post. That way, he can exploit his size advantage over his defender. Eventually, many teams decided to defend him with a forward, but that allowed him to find a mismatch. He showed a great balance of when to take over with his scoring and when to get others involved. During that 22-game span, Penny averaged 26.4 points on 50% shooting, 6.8 assists, 5.3 rebounds, and 2 steals per game. That was nearly a 6-point increase from the previous year. The Orlando Magic also had a 17-5 record. They were tied with the Houston Rockets for the second best overall record. Hardaway proved in a resounding way that he could do more and lead a team on his own. Once Shaq made his return to the lineup, the Magic continued their winning ways. A big reason for that is that Penny adjusted to a secondary role without any complaints. He could have caused a lot of off-court issues if he demanded a bigger role. Instead, they finished the season with 60 wins, the most in franchise history. That is impressive, not just because Shaq missed 28 total games, but also because the Magic never lost their way from a roller coaster ride of a season. There was all the drama surrounding Shaq's injury, his free agency decision looming over the franchise, and some of the locker room drama that was brewing between those two young stars. But while they were in the middle of a commercial war, they were producing magic on the floor. None of the outside noise stopped him from playing his role to perfection. Although there is no question that Shaq was their best player, people quickly came to realize that Penny was their emotional leader. He was a key piece behind this dominant season. He deserved to finish third in MVP voting behind Michael Jordan and David Robinson. Now let's take a look at his overall numbers. He averaged 21.7 points on 51% shooting, 7.1 assists, 4.3 rebounds, and 2 steals per game. The difference in the scoring numbers from the beginning of the season is the biggest indicator of how much he had to sacrifice his game once Shaq returned. Now let's take a look at his best performance. That came early in the season against the New Jersey Nets. He had 42 points on 62% shooting, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks. It was an exciting triple overtime victory. On top of that, he was extremely clutch that year. He had a total of 3 game winners. Seriously, there wasn't a single weakness in his game. I can speak for many people when I say that he is one of the most talented and gifted players I've ever seen. For a short period, he had the NBA in the palm of his hands, and we're still talking about his greatness nearly 30 years after this amazing season. The 1995 season for David Robinson and the San Antonio Spurs was a step in the right direction. They won 62 games, which was the best record in the NBA. The Admiral won his first MVP award, and they reached the conference finals after years of playoff disappointments. There was a reason to believe that they could take the next step and reach the finals, especially with the way David Robinson was playing. He remained a force on the offensive end and a monster on defense. But we're talking about the best players of the 90s. This player doesn't get brought up enough, but he completed one of the most underrated 3-year stretches. He finished runner-up for the MVP in 1994, then he won the MVP in 95, and he finished runner-up again in 1996. There's a strong case to be made that he was a top 3 player during that stretch. What he was doing for this season shouldn't be overlooked either. Take a look at his historic averages. 25 points on 52% shooting, 12.2 rebounds, 3.3 blocks, and 3 assists per game. Did you know that this is only the 10th time that a player's averaged over 25 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game? On top of that, he led the league in defensive win shares, defensive box plus minus, and defensive rating. He also finished second in rebounds and third in blocks. This obviously played a huge role in the Spurs finishing third in defensive rating and opponent's field goal percentage. The per game numbers and analytics gave him a strong case to winning the Defensive Player of the Year award over Gary Payton. The way he was impacting this team on both ends of the floor was astonishing. It was clear that their success started and ended with him. And just like we mentioned for Hakeem, David was also someone that could fill up a stat sheet. Take for example when he scored his season high in a double overtime thriller against the New York Knicks. He recorded 45 points on 58% shooting, 16 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Then there was a game against the New Jersey Nets where he looked like prime Shaq. He posted 44 points on 75% shooting, 9 rebounds, 5 blocks, 4 steals, and 4 assists. But to truly have an idea of what he can do on both ends of the floor, check out what he did against the Portland Trail Blazers.
Get him. He can do so much.
One of the things you want to see is David Robinson beats everybody back, trying to come back to the same play. David Robinson down on the post against Dudley, an easy 2.
6, it'll be the worst in 72, 73. I don't want that to happen. Robinson, no relation to David. Down to Aaron McKee, blocked by David Robinson. Robinson comes to the ball side and gets against Sabonis. There's the quickness.
It was a masterful two-way performance. It was games like these where he made some question if he was the MVP. He finished with 39 points on 55% shooting, 9 rebounds, 8 blocks, 3 steals, and 3 assists. His performances and numbers were historically great, but there's something different about David. He was taking his role as a leader seriously. In the previous years, it was not something that he felt like it was necessary to do. He confirmed that notion when he said this to Sports Illustrated. "I used to have the idea that I just had to come here and take care of my job. I thought that was what professional basketball was all about. I do my job, you do your job. If we all do our jobs, we win. I know now that I have to do more than that." End of quote. And to his credit, he made a conscious effort to score less and allow his teammates to shine. That led to Sean Elliott averaging his career high of 20 points per game. He was even selected to be an All-Star. Avery Johnson also ended up having the best year of his career, and he finished third in the league in assists. The result was that the Spurs ended up having the second best record in the West. During the 14-game winning streak that they had late in the year, New Jersey Nets coach Butch Beard said this about San Antonio: "This is a ball club that could very easily win the whole thing." That was the expectation the league experts had as well, that they would at least reach the finals. You couldn't blame them for feeling that way with the way David was playing. Everyone always talks about MJ and the Bulls when discussing the 1996 season, but let's not forget that the Admiral had an all-time great season from the center position. When Michael Jordan was seeking revenge, there was nothing more exciting and dangerous. He was determined to put the disappointing playoff defeat against Orlando Magic behind him, and he showcased the final evolution of his game. This propelled the Chicago Bulls to have the most successful season in NBA history. The plan was simple. He was going to beat his opponents with his brain rather than his hops. He took his time reading the defense, he picked his spots, and he was more of a jump shooter than ever before. In fact, he shot a career high 42.7% from the 3. It's true that this occurred during a very brief era where the 3-point line was shortened. It went from 23 feet 9 inches to a uniform 22 feet around the basket. But shooting about 43% from 22 feet out is still very impressive. However, he spent most of his time scoring from the post. He recognized that his size brought a lot of favorable matchups against many of his opponents. When you combine his precision shooting, impeccable footwork, strength, and his unstoppable fadeaway, it's no wonder that he remained the most dominant scoring threat. On top of all that, he still had that killer first step, and he could finish above the rim whenever he wanted. Phil Jackson confirmed how Jordan's game evolved since coming back from retirement, according to the LA Times. I think it has evolved because he's much more conscious about taking his time and figuring out where the defenses are. He's not always in attack mode now. Sometimes it's passing the ball, just drawing the double teams and finding the open guys. End of quote. There's no doubt that he was a key to their incredibly efficient offense. Then we have his extremely underrated stat line for the season. He averaged 30.4 points on 49.5% shooting, 6.6 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 2.2 steals per game. Did you know that it took nearly 20 years for a player to average over 30 points while being that efficient? It wasn't until 2014 when Kevin Durant was finally able to surpass those numbers. But by then, there were several rule changes that promoted a more offensive-friendly league. For Michael to post those numbers during that era highlights how skillful of a scorer he was. But we're only telling half of the story. We can absolutely make the case that he was the man behind their dominating defense. For example, there are 4 different defensive categories where he finished in the top 10. He was 2nd in defensive win shares, 3rd in steals, 5th in defensive box plus minus, and 9th in defensive rating. Did you know they posted the highest defensive win shares by any guard since the merger? It has to be said that Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Ron Harper contributed immensely to their defensive attack. However, the case can be made that Michael was the team's most valuable defensive asset. This deserves to be mentioned when discussing the greatest two-way seasons from any player. The greatest example of this came when he played against the Detroit Pistons. That's when he did this.
Shot clock at 10. Jordan against Houston. Flips it up and in. Otis for Grant, and there's Jordan with the steal. Whoop, here's another swipe for Michael.
Boy, he's had 3 of these. Michael's carrying the Bulls right now offensively.
Here's a tough ball away over Joe. Michael inside. The fall away, and he fills it up. Even Michael knows. Oh, my!
Wow.
He ended the game with 53 points on 75% shooting, 11 rebounds, 6 steals, and 2 assists. This is only the 6th time in history that a player has posted over 50 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 steals in a game. On top of that dominant performance, there were 8 other games where he scored over 40 points. Believe it or not, there were some who doubted that he was never going to be his old dominant self. But he quickly shut them up by showing a whole other side to his greatness. This is what the New York Times wrote about Michael that season. Rather than erode Jordan's greatness, age has made him more transparent. As he begins to drift back in his physical gifts, we see more clearly what made him special all along. His drive and intelligence, his mastery of the craft, his thirst to prevail, and his cool palms when a game hangs for the grasping. End of quote. If you still believe he was an individualist in a team's game, just remember the number of wins the Bulls had. You cannot lead a team to the most successful and dominant season ever if you are a soloist. He was still putting up impressive numbers, but nothing was more important than winning, and he knew exactly what to do to lead his team into basketball immortality. Out of all the incredible accomplishments that he has achieved, leading the Bulls to 72 wins might be what he's most proud of, other than winning 6 titles. But what about you all? Do you think this was Michael's greatest season? Do you think they got the top 5 players right for the MVP? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.